At this plenary session, we'll be talking about re-engineering global cooperation, fostering collective solutions for a sustainable future. We've heard the majority of our speakers have spoken about what is obtainable in the world and how these things, of course, will eventually unfold. So at this point, this is what I want us to do. Once I call up one of the panelists, please, as they are walking down their seats, let's keep clapping for them. Let's just keep clapping. Once I mention the name, please, let's keep clapping for them. First on my list is Mazis Dr. Sam Obopla, President Leadership Agenda Summit 2024. Please, let's keep clapping for him as he comes to his head. Let's keep clapping. Let's keep clapping. Yes. Thank you very much, sir. Sir Chikwe Ndese, I think you're Ndesi. Udesi. Okay, sorry. Okay. All right. I think the information you are told to give us is not complete yet, so they want you to complete those information. Thank you very much. Thank you. Toluwa Shani, please, let's clap for her. Head of Partnership and Client Coverage, Imagine Africa Growth. Thank you. Please, let's clap for her again. She's you see young ladies like this. Yes, thank you. Please do that again. Yes. Okay. Then the last person on the list here is Dr. Adeleye Fabusoro, Head of West Africa, CNBC Africa. Please give this a round. Can you also help us welcome to the stage? If not, this session will be moderated by Ulari Wangozi, Managing Partner. Some of the things that he said, I think that really caught my attention. When you talk about building a global economy, and I think that is very, very important, where everybody's given a level playing ground, both in Africa and Europe and the rest of the world. And we talked about we must be committed.
Engineering global cooperation and fostering collective solutions for a sustainable future. Our keynote speakers have talked extensively on different matters ranging from collaboration, global security, and trade. So we're just going to dive in a bit into a discussion to gain some other insightful information. The conversation has come across the fact that key issues have been mentioned, that we, of course, globally we continue to deal with issues of extreme poverty and all of that, and we continue to deal with unemployment. There's conflict, issues of distrust, and pockets of conflicts going up and there because of this distrust. So we also have issues of weak governance, weak infrastructure, and when you look across the globe, we also have issues of natural resource depletion, we have issues of climate change that we're trying to discuss and come to an agreement with. So, and the ever-rising matters of insecurity. So now, looking at all of these challenges that we have, but I also like to believe that wherever there are challenges, there are always opportunities. So I just wanted to ask our panelists, and we can start in any particular order. What are the opportunities available for global cooperation? In other words, how can we foster collective solutions globally? Thank you.
Good afternoon, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I believe that what they say in local balance, that in the land where there is plenty of sickness, medicine man will find an opportunity. So I believe that what we're talking about is, yes, you have identified all the challenges, all the obstacles and things that can derail normal working of the system. But I believe that there is always a way around every problem if you search enough. I believe that where to start with is what I call a consensus of good faith among leadership. If we have local leaders that have good faith and that understand that the world is a better place if all the people can have shared prosperity, then this consensus of good faith can operate. What I'm trying to say is that if the global leaders, whether they are in the public or the private, governmental or non-governmental, understand and agree that the critical reason organizations exist, nations exist, is to better the well-being of the average citizen. Even private sector companies and organizations that provide products and services, their reason for providing those products and expecting exchange of value is that those products and services will solve problems, fill needs, create values that will make the lives better. So I think there has to be this primary understanding, because so often our inability to trade, our inability to relate is essentially due to this block caused by lack of consensus and understanding of why we exist as nations, why we exist as organizations, what is our main purpose. And that purpose is to make life better. So I'm calling first and foremost for opportunity for consensus, understanding, and being able to be open to the whole idea that humanity depends on each other to exist. That is one. Number two, in my opinion, is enforcement of rules and regulations, including law and order. Global trade is managed by rules, and those rules, some are globally acceptable. That's why I have organizations like WTO and such organizations that try to supervise and regulate and ensure that the trade terms and policies, tariffs, etc., etc. We speak about global competitiveness, we speak about free trade, we speak about removal of tariffs, and we speak about non-tariff barriers. These things have been documented, agreements reached. If we keep to those agreements, then we can overcome the other challenges that are beyond or above us. These challenges that we have that are being caused by wars, by climate change, and such other unpredicted developments we can still overcome them if we keep to the rules and accept the standards. And I say this, for example, there's a disagreement between Russia and Ukraine. And what does Russia do? Russia now blocks Ukraine from exporting. That is actually going outside the rules and the laws of international trade. that you are fighting with one nation does not stop that nation from trading with other people or fulfilling their obligations. So we must have organizations that can enforce. Today we talk about United Nations, we talk about the Court of International Justice, and several of such organizations. They have a responsibility to ensure that the rules of international trade, international associations are enforced. Finally, it is the issue also of mentioning global security, because as Chief Chigwe said earlier on, without security, nothing else can happen. So there must be an agreement within nations and sub-nationals to put the right focus on providing minimum security to allow even domestic trade to go on, and also to allow international trade to go on. Preventing piracies, preventing people who block sea routes is a security matter. And we have national, international navies of the seas are here to have piracies. We have all manner of blockades interrupting trade. This for me are my preliminary three points I think can help us to overcome our current global challenges. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. So I'll just go into the question quickly. I think there's many things that we can do to optimize global cooperation. Like Dr. Mazi just said, the first thing we can do is creating awareness of the fact that these issues even exist and they're affecting all of us. When all stakeholders now understand exactly how these issues affect them, and if they are left unchecked, how they will affect them, then we can now move into my first point, which is creating shared goals and shared responsibilities, so people can feel more accountable and involved in the process. Multilateral engagement is also very important, making sure that we're strengthening our existing multilaterals as well as creating and establishing new ones. Creating innovative financial models as well, making sure that there's incentives for government stakeholders to participate in collaborative efforts, as well as penalties for organizations and countries who don't participate in these efforts. Data sharing, information sharing, and technology sharing as well is extremely critical for this. A lot of the nations who are ahead in addressing these challenges are doing this because of technological advancements, and it's very important that these developed nations share this information with nations that are still developing. So, yeah, I think I'll stop there so I still allow other people to have answers to give.
Thank you very much. In Interpol, we have always believed two things. If you want to create sizable change, you must have to look at leadership. Leaders are the ones that create and dictate the pace at which changes work. What I mean by leaders is doesn't necessarily have to be a leader at the one they call the Oga on top. It's not that one. Any position you find yourself, like you're a chief executive, any position, take for example, what happened in America so many years ago, when the Gambino family and the Costa Leons took over the activities in New York, New Jersey area, even the DC, Washington DC. One man, Edgar Hoover, who was in charge of the FBI, decided to bring the whole of the Gambino family to their knees. And there was peace in America. Look at what happened also in Singapore. When one man decided to create a different narrative. Lee Kuan Yew moved Singapore from third world to first world within 15 years. Today, Singapore has the highest sovereign national wealth in the world. Singapore. So these are the things that cause changes. Another thing that creates desired impact that we believe in security is deterrent. Deterrent. If there's no deterrent, people behave the way they want to be. We don't believe that the best way to make people obey rules and regulations is by educating them. No. Law enforcement. Law enforcement is the bottom line. And let me give you peculiar examples. In China, any corruption in China, you are executed. China for years will create almost zero corruption in China. In some Gulf regions, Qatar, UAE, is mostly essentially zero crime to a large extent because of the penalties associated with it. I don't want to talk about what happens in Iran or Iraq. If you kiss a woman in public, they cut off your hands. So you see there's no kissing going on there. That's deterrent. I don't suggest or support that one, but these are deterrents. In America today, deterrent is lapsed. We have what they call suspended sentences, and also you will be on probation or parole. Crime continue to happen. If you import weed to South Africa, what I mean by weed is illicit drugs. Or maybe bringing cocaine into Saudi Arabia. You have to negotiate with your great-grandparents. That's where you have to go and meet them. But in countries where you are a drug pusher like America, you are giving suspended sentence if you are a first offender, or maybe you are giving some part at the back to serve 2-3 years. The tendency remains that the drug problem is a major factor. So 2 things: leadership, deterrent. If you have good leaders, things work well. When they are deterrent, crime is abated. That's our thinking in security circles.
Thank you very much. So what is the next context for conversation? And operating in the global space, like you rightly said, people have interestingly mentioned even solutions that I wanted to ask in all your responses. And you also touched on the challenges, so that's fine. But bear in mind that we're trying to achieve collective solutions in the global space. Therefore, we have the dynamics of different players. We talk about multilateral agreements and relationships, but there are also multi-players, governments, individuals, because some individuals, like you said about the Toledo family, try to pull down the government, but the government sort of surmounted above the individuals. And there are also cases where the individuals have actually successfully, frustrated the government. So there are multi-players, is what I'm trying to say, and the dynamics of power, and consistently the dynamics of inequality. So where we want to say we want to foster global, solutions and come together on one table with our unequal fingers. How do we manage the dynamics of power and inequality and achieve the success with global collaboration? Thank you.
in most areas because we have different levels of development in technology, a different understanding of what our approaches should be. Let me give you specific examples of what I mean. In Interpol has what we call an SOP, Standard Operating Procedure. That SOP ought to be the benchmark, the yardstick on which every of its operation strive on. But most member nations will not certainly not be ready for some of the SOPs. Some of the SOPs they don't like. They will prefer to do it the other way. Let me give you an example of what I mean. North Korea is part of Interpol. Interpol SOP indicates that nobody can be flagged. What I mean by flagged, nobody's name can be put as a wanted person if the courts have not found him so guilty. But North Korea doesn't want to accept that. North Korea does not go to court. Once the leaders decide that they don't like your face, that's all. They want you flagged. So these are the discrepancies we have in international collaborations. Where you have an international body setting standards, wanting for those standards to be a mirror for everybody. But then, different nations, as they put it, different folks with different strokes. That is where we have difficulty in some of these areas. Also in Nigeria, when we had military government in place, there was enormous difficulty because the military organizations will want to have some level of authoritarianism, but which is very far from what the operational provisions are for Interpol. Interpol is more or less a democratic setup. All decisions ought to go by way of vote. If you have any policy, if you have any decision, if you have any idea you want to be applied as one of the principles of Interpol, it must go through the process of democracy. But those democratic processes are not what most countries require. Some countries of the world, especially where we have those extremisms, where you have those extremists in power, they do not agree with those levels of collaboration. That's where we have difficulty. But generally, you will find that it is always the best to fool the crowd where reason is best abused.
So on the issue of lack of trust between stakeholders, I think relationship building is basically the solution for this. So initiatives that basically promote relationship building between not just governments, between nations, private sector as well. So initiatives that allow for networking. So which is why I love all these like CWEC, I don't know if anyone is about the Commonwealth. Basically bringing together businesses from different nations. So just anything that basically allows for relationship building, cultural exchanges as well. Nations should make sure that their immigration policies are friendly, allow for cultural exchange, allow for relationships to be built, and which will basically counteract any lack of trust. And yeah, thank you.
Well, I have 3 points. First is the issue of having global institutions that can mediate. Because as long as human beings exist, organizations exist, and institutions exist, there will always be conflict, and there will always be difficulty in accepting who is right or who is wrong. And so we need to empower, if that's the right word, the issue of enforcement systems, organizations. Again, I go back to the United Nations, I go back to the courts, because these are the institutions that need to stand in between nations to help. I also believe that the rising situation of out-of-court resolutions, conflict resolution, mediation, become important in repairing relationships and building them, because we live in a competitive world. As long as there is a definite quantum of resource available, there will be competition. People like to take advantage over the others. Perhaps the stronger taking advantage over the weaker. The selfishness in man and the self-survival instincts often becloud the sense of humanity, and shows every once in a while people overstep their bounds. And this is why we need to be sure we have some agreements that this is acceptable behavior, this is not acceptable behavior. The Criminal Court of Justice, for example, which I referred to earlier on, that South Africa to Israel to, sincerely is supposed to bring order and say there are certain lines that should not be crossed when we do them fairly. The other point is what I call power equation. Power equation. Power equation is that in any relationship, there's usually a cascading of power or ascending of power. One party has higher power, the other party has lower power. Now, for relationship and for collective ability to agree to drive a particular vision or to confront a particular problem or pursue a given cause, that equation needs to be in equilibrium. And the only way we can bring it in equilibrium is that the man who has highest power has to moderate his power and find a way of allowing the guy with the lower power to feel more powerful. And if that happens, then there's some bit of equilibrium and communication can go well. Related to that is also those ones who have lower power to also understand how to deal with those that have higher power. In the United Nations, for example, Sierra Leone, Gambia, Seychelles, Cape Verde, they all have one vote with the United States of America. They have one vote with Russia, even India, with their large populations. We sit on the table, but you must also understand that there is not the balance, that there is an equation that does not add up. So in relating to the bigger powers, you must show some humility. Because often, it's ego that leads to some of this disagreement. And ego is if you feel that you are big, when really you are small. And then we need to test whether you are really big. And that gets to conflict. So, but if ab initio, you knew your state, your level, and you try to tread with caution and be able to be empathetic to the man with a stronger power, probably will not be persuaded to try out his strength over you. So I'm thinking of how to grow relationship. It requires those three places. Have a mediator or an enforcer, do some power balancing, and let there be some humility if you know you already have a disadvantage, either in size or in the arsenals of power that you have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And so please, the last question, I'm prepared to take questions from the team, from the group. So just the last question, but just wanted to say that you can start taking note of your questions in preparation for that next phase. So I'm just curious to know really your thoughts. in terms of this. Is security a prior condition for peace, or is peace a consequence of security?
Will not be persuaded to try out his strength over you. So I'm thinking of how to grow relationship. It requires those three places. Have a mediator or an enforcer, do some power balancing, and let there be some humility if you know you already have a disadvantage, either in size or in the arsenals of power that you have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And so please, the last question, I'm prepared to take questions from the team, from the group. So just the last question, but just wanted to say that you can start taking note of your questions in preparation for that next phase. So I'm just curious to know really your thoughts in terms of this. Is security a prior condition for peace, or is peace a consequence of security?
Well, this time, before we go to the start. Well, chicken and the egg, Abi, and the egg and the chicken. Okay, let's just start from birth. Let's start from birth, where we were just born. At that point, what exists between two of us? Is it peace or security? I believe that is peace first. Peace. And peace is an internal thing, but then it's affected by environment. But that's when we are innocent. But the world has gone beyond innocence now. We are all completely what? Guilty. We are completely guilty. We have learned all manner of evil. And therefore, it is clear that innate security which comes from infancy and innocence has been banished. And so today, I believe that it's security that will precede peace, because we have come to the point where a combination of factors, some of them we've talked about, the struggle for access to limited resource. Every resource in the world is limited. And so, as when God created the world, as those of us believe that the world was created by God, there were two inhabitants, Adam and Eve, and they had the whole world as it is today. The land space belonged to the two. That same land space is what 8 billion people are competing to live in. So there are going to be a little bit of effort to struggle to get advantage. So if there is no security, someone is going to invade the other, and someone is going to take advantage of the weakness of the other. So I believe that we should focus, because as Chikwe said, you can't preach to bring peace anymore. You can no longer sermonize and ask people to be of good behavior. They leave the church, they forget what you told them, and they go back to struggling and beating the rules and the laws. So I think security apparatus, security systems, enforcement of security enablers will be what will bring peace. Of course, it can bring peace, but then it also has to be combined with appealing to humanity and ensuring a sense of justice, equity, and fair play. When people have a feeling of sense of justice, equity, and fair play, they are more likely to be at peace with each other. That's my input. Thank you.
I completely agree, by the way. I think we passed the stage of addressing peace on its own. Insecurity is prevalent, conflicts are prevalent, and so we have to address them first of all before we now move on to say peace or whatever. Even in we talked about the Russia and Ukraine war, we talked about Israel and Hamas, but bringing all this into Nigeria, what we call insecurity is extreme, kidnapping, all of that. And so it's necessary to address them first of all before you now move on to peace talks and all of that. Thank you.
Yes, peace is good. But according to Magisa, we should have equity, fair play, and justice. But where does that exist? It only exists on paper. It does not exist on the mind of international communities. Look at what United Nations did. Every member is a member. Every member has a vote. But when it comes to security, only Security Council is involved, not all members. Where there lies justice there, where lies equity, that the decision can be taken, and then just one member can say hell no, and the whole decision is gone. That's what we see. So if you have that situation, there is no justice, there's no equity, there is no fair play. So if you ask me, the important thing is security. Security. Look at India and Pakistan. Today, both of them have nuclear weapons. There is peace, at least at the border, because there's capacity, mutual capacity. It is where the competition becomes unfair. That's when you see people harassing the others. If everybody has capacity to defend themselves, everybody will respect themselves. That is why most times we emphasize on capacity to defend yourself, not peace. America always will insist that the best form of education in terms of obeying the laws is enforcement of those laws. When you enforce those laws, you better educate the people on how best to obey them.
Thanks so much. So over to you, please. Any questions? Yes.
So because of our time, we just take the questions for like 10 minutes. Please, 10 minutes. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Please let us go straight away. Straight. We have this question and answer session just 10 minutes.
Fine, thank you. My name is Mr. Chikweze Josh Nduwo, CEO founder of Eagles Limited. My question actually goes to, I would say Doc Obama. I wanted to say that, but he also made, Saudis also made a comment about it. Having looked at the world, the way things are played, I was wondering, do we actually need to talk more about equity as against accountability? Because can we actually operate in an equitable world? Is it possible? Is it fit? Because if you have more things at stake, you have more to protect. If you have less things at stake, you have less things to protect. The same thing goes in the business world as well as, because countries are, if you look at a country that is more powerful, they've been able to manage their resources better. Countries that are less powerful has not managed their resources better. So if we keep talking about equilibrium, like you mentioned, as opposed to accountability, you think we can actually move forward?
All right. Should we answer? Okay. Should we go ahead and respond?
No, let's just answer the question.
Good afternoon. Mine is a comment. My name is Wabo Majabu. I'm from ATC. And it's a comment applauding the Leadership Agenda Summit 2024. We spoke a lot about equity. And when I look at the stage today, two beautiful ladies, you Because, in Africa, we sometimes say decisions are sometimes made in the kitchen. So, well done.
My name is Collins Wes. I'm a journalist with The Nation. So my question is going to Sir Chikwe Ndesi. You talked about several things, especially kidnapping and all that, security issues and all that you raised. But I was surprised that you didn't talk so much about because kidnapping most times, even though you say sometimes it's not for ransom, there could be other issues. I mean, you didn't talk about maybe how the banks could play a role, in seeing that such ransom payments are tracked or anything related to that. I mean, if the interest is for financial gains, then banks somehow might be involved, and if they are not involved, they could be doing one or two things, to also support the security in getting the situation under control. Thank you.
All right, just one more. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Dr. Prosper Gombo from Abuja. I just wanted to raise, I don't know that to call it a question. When Sir Chikwe was making his presentation, he said two things that struck. And I'm just trying to challenge us here because I imagine that we'll have like a community or some role for the journalists. I mean, it's surprising for me to just be hearing this kind of select group that, for example, the tracker, for example, to track crimes is available free of cost, and it's just because it's not been subscribed to. I mean, the subscription or the renewals of the license are not being made that we are not using them. You also said something about having databases in Nigeria. I mean, in the Interpol system that nobody is using. I want to imagine that the journalists or people in authority should be able to put this on the front burner because, this is something that will make a lot of difference. But if it looks like it's just a select audience that will have this kind of information, I don't think we are doing our country the good that we ought to. So let me start. Look, incidentally, journalism by my side. Let's put this as some of the things we should blow up. At times, sensationalism is more marketable, but I think this kind of information is something that we should really put on the front burner. Thank you.
Let me answer some questions. I think you take a long time. No, I'll be fast about it. Let me give you information, and I'm happy the press is here. Let the press blow this information. Let this listening government listen. The previous government was not listening at all. On the average, we have about 350 billion losses through the banks, through bank fraud and cybercrime every year. 350 billion. And the question is, how do these criminals work? We have about 133 million account holders in the country. 133 million account holders. And we have about 5 million fake accounts. How does this fake account work? They are using stolen IDs. They are using IDs of dead people. They are using fake IDs in its entirety to open those accounts. So investigation becomes a problem. You can't investigate because they are fake IDs. The bank accounts were opened with fake IDs. But these billions go into the account. In fact, we are being told that some of these ransom are paid to bank accounts. Ransom are paid to bank accounts. It's no more a cash thing. They are so emboldened that they pay it into banks and it's absolute connivance. Like we talked about insider trading. That is what is happening in our country today. About 5 million of these 433 million account holders are fake accounts. The telephone number of Tokumba Kiyomi was blocked 2 weeks ago, and they were making all calls to him. Couldn't the CBN governor? They sent a message to him to please pay money on behalf of Tokumba Kiyomi. And there are about 28 accounts already. The name of the account holder, the account number, and the bank stated in very clear forms. But they can't be investigated because they used fake IDs and they also used stolen IDs in connivance with bank officials to ensure that this happens. That is what the problem lies in Nigeria.
Thank you very much, Chief Udensi, for this revelation.
This is part of the takeaway, as Dr. Koko just said. It's part of the takeaway, not just for us who are attending, but who represent Nigerians and represent Africans. And when we're able to put these things out to the public view and knowledge, maybe some action will be taken, which will, at the end of the day, be beneficial to everybody. Now, specifically to the guy who asked the first question, like, we must differentiate between equity and equality. Yeah. He said equity and accountability. I'm starting with equity. Equity is not equality. You know, if you say equality, that's a different area. Equity is the more you invest, the more you get. The less you invest, the less you get. You get in proportion to your investment. If you put 2, you should not be given the same as someone who put 10 or someone who put 1. The return should be related to your investment, to your work, to what you do. So now we're talking about equity, which is a fair thing. Equity is fair. If you want more, do more. If you sow more, you reap more. You sow less, you reap less. That's equity. Because it will be terrible when those who sow less get more than those who sowed more. Or those who do more do not get at all. They get like those who do more, which one even affects some productivity issues in our organizations. There are some organizations, especially in the public sector, where we move like a herd of cattle. We are step 1, level 1. Next year, step 2, level 2. The year after, step 3, level. We keep moving like a sheep, a string of cows. Nobody's measuring your productivity. Nobody's measuring your output. We all same cosmates who become generals the same day, even without firing a bullet at war or saving anybody. So equity is a different concept, which is a concept of fairness. But fairness is not preaching rewarding laziness. If you didn't do work, then we'll give you like we're giving everybody. That's not what I'm preaching. And it doesn't at all also promote peace. In fact, it discourages people when you do equality without differentiating. All figures are not equal. There's really nothing God created equal. We have different heights. But it's giving us an opportunity to climb if we want to climb. It's giving us an opportunity to jump, to catch up with the rest of the people. It's giving us an opportunity to look for people to hang on their shoulders and grow taller so that you can see more of the sun. Now, accountability is another concept. If you look at when I talked about those corporate governance pillars, I said responsibility, fairness, which like equity, then accountability and transparency. Now, accountability is a measure which is inherent in every resource that you have access to. The air that God gives you to breathe, you should be accountable for it. This day that God has given us to live, we should account for it. And therefore, every resource that is committed to your charge, is it in a business, is it in the government, any allocation of any asset 1,000 naira to travel, you should be accountable. Now, the accountability is not just in terms of financial accounting and bringing forged receipts or all manner of things people do when they are doing financial accounting. We are talking about your output in relationship to that input of that expenditure. What did you produce with 1,000 naira? Not telling me you spent it and brought me a receipt, which I believe most times is fake receipt. We know how it happens. So accountability is critical, and anyway, you demand accountability, you are more likely to get results and improvement. It's like deterrence, it's like enforcement. Accountability is what have you done with what you said you would do? What have you done with the space we are giving to you, with the responsibility, with the authority, with the privilege? Buy us a 160 million vehicle. Okay, what is the output? What has the country benefited from this 160 million? If you can convince us that you generated even commensurate output with it, we can buy you a 270 million car the next time. So both of them are important. Accountability promotes productivity. Equity promotes peace. So that the two, that they work in those lines. They're all important, but none is replacing the other. But I'm trying to say that they're all important. You cannot, if you remove equity, then everything cascades to ground zero. Let me also just make a comment on the issue of somebody talked about the security systems and the databases and why they're not being utilized by the Congo. I believe that part of the problem of Nigeria is that we're a corrupt, endemically corrupt nation. The corruption is endemic. You know what I mean by endemic?
Cancerous. Cancerous.
Yes, cancerous, but it is not even, sometimes you can notice cancer. Our own corruption endemicity is that we have begun to live with it and comfortable with it. So we don't, it's not like cancer. You know, cancer, you can't be comfortable with cancer. At some point, you show up and cause inconvenience, even if it's benign. You know, we are living with corruption, and corruption has become part of us, and we are accustomed to it. Many people, and permit me, please, many people, especially in my country, Nigeria, let me speak where I'm very familiar with, can no longer define what corruption is and what it is not, or differentiate. I'll give you a small example, just one example. You know, I went to, I belong to a group called the Full Gospel Businessmen's Fellowship. I went to speak at a Full Gospel Businessmen's chapter. After speaking, the chapter president and the wife said I was going to pray for them. Especially, I said, okay, I will do so. So when we finished the meeting and people left, the president and the wife now came close and they knelt down. I said, before I pray, what is your prayer point? What are you specially asking God to do? Now look at their prayer point. These are Christians, maybe speaking in tongues. That the man says he works in Bureau for Public Enterprises or due process where they approve things. He said people come, he helps them, and they get the approval. They say they'll come back to see him, they don't come back. So I should pray that when he has people to get their problems solved, they should come back to reward him. Now I just told the man, get up, sit down. Let's talk about this matter. You have crossed the road. You are now on the corruption side. You probably thought because you're a Christian, you didn't ask for kick fronts. You didn't ask for advance, give me 10%, but you're expecting to get it from the back, and they should come back and say it's not it. And I'm saying this, they didn't see this as corruption at all, and they even want me to take it to God. Can you imagine to throw a corrupt to God? So my point is that we, as a nation, this is why I think that what is happening now may help us, truly. This naira that is depreciating, this inflation that is going on, this insecurity may help us to get up and begin to talk and begin to yell and begin to shout, because we are so comfortable sitting where we are, because there are opportunities to balance the budget. The day you get to where you can no longer balance the budget from any side, you will shout. That's why countries where there is no corruption, they pay taxes, they can go on 1 week, 2 weeks, 1 month, 1 year strike. Here we don't do more than 1 day. We run back and go and continue to eat the process of corruption and all manner of things. Sorry, this is just what I wanted to add.
I would just quickly add something to the question of accountability versus equity. I think more accountability will promote more equity. When nations take an inward look at themselves, as where they're at, it allows you to assess and be like, okay, realistic with yourself, okay, we need to do more, or we need to do, yeah, we do not less, but we need to do more. So yeah, so more accountability will promote more equity, just an answer to that question.
Thank you very much for this session and for your contributions. Move on to the next agenda.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Please, let's just wait. I think everybody, sorry. Let's forgive him.